large public system, innovation will be eliminated, and we will be stuck in 2012 for your health care for a long time.
All right, so I'm going to ask another question, and then there's going to be opportunity for you to take questions from the audience, and also some very short closing remarks. So the last question, and if you could, I'm combining a few questions here because for some strange reason, we didn't have any lack of argument so far. But as I was walking in today, I received this little card, and it said, "How do you decide who to vote for?" And I was informed when I was given it that this was going to be a question that was asked today. I didn't know this, being the moderator, but I decided, hey, it's a good question, so we should ask it. So I want to know what your thoughts are on the upcoming election and how one should decide who to vote for.
Well, I'm going to give a very unconventional answer. I just studied this a lot. The Republicans figured it out intuitively long before we did. You don't actually have to decide who to vote for. You just have to decide to vote. Because if you decide to vote, your emotional side is already going to decide who you're going to vote for. We are prisoners of our own values. And the Republicans figured out a long time ago that Republican voters were values voters. What they didn't know is that Democratic voters are also values voters. We just think, because we think we do it all on issues. Almost nobody votes on issues. There's a few that do. We vote our values, and there's a guy named Drew Weston who wrote a book called The Political Brain, who's a neuropsychologist from Emory University in Atlanta. He put some Kerry supporters and some Bush supporters in 2004 in an MRI machine, stuffed them full of dye, which I assume he had informed consent for, and watched the limbic system, the emotional system of their brain light up before the cognitive system in terms of when they were asked political questions. The truth is, if you want to know who wins a debate, go home and TiVo or DRV or whatever you do, DVR. Sorry. Yeah, the internet campaign indeed, right? Go home and do that, and after you've seen the debate and listened to the issues, go home and watch it with no sound. You're going to see who the winner of the debate's going to be. Because American voters are actually very smart. People say, oh, you're dissing American voters by saying they don't vote on issues. But they do. Some of them do. What they do is they know that they can't possibly predict, nor can either of the candidates predict what's going to happen in the next 8 years or 4 years. They know there's probably going to be some big crisis. So what they do emotionally, and I think sensibly, is they want to find the person who's going to do the things that are most likely to approach the problems that are going to face this country the way they would. And that's a values connection. And that's why connection is so important in politics. It's now been proved scientifically. The Republicans figured this out and, frankly, kicked our rear ends with this for about 4 years or 8 years. Finally, when I got to be the DNC chair, I canned all the consultants that we'd been paying to tell us how to lose all those years. And I found a 35-year-old African-American pollster named Cornell Belcher, who modestly calls his outfit Brilliant Corners. And he was the first Democrat I'd ever met that understood that we were values voters too. And tonight in the question period, I hope we'll get a chance to talk about some of the polling we found out, because your generation is an incredible generation. One of the things we found out, evangelical Christians in my generation, everybody knows it's all about abortion and gay rights. In your generation, it's about climate change, it's about poverty. And so your generation is a generation who wants to work together across what in our generation is a big divide, which gives me great hope for this country. Vote your values. You make the decision to go vote, and your instincts will take care of the rest of it.
I would generally agree that people vote their values. I do disagree that people are not issue voters. I think there are a lot of voters in America who vote on issues. Obviously, a lot of those issues are driven, clearly their opinions on those issues are driven by their values. And some people have very, very strong set of principles and the issues that line up with them. And the country, as we've seen, is fairly divided on that front. And there's a very small group in the middle who I would make the argument don't vote on issues because their value system is, well, let's say more fluid. They're not folks who have particularly strong convictions about how society and government should operate. They don't pay a lot of attention to so they're worried about their own life. They don't think about politics. They don't think about these things. And oddly enough, they're the ones who end up deciding the elections, which is very, very interesting. And what I think we've seen over the last couple of elections is that those voters in the middle who don't pay a lot of attention, who don't aren't attached to a whole set of issues, tend to vote on how they feel about the candidates. You said turning it on and watching how the candidates are reacting. I think that's one thing. Is that invalid? No. I mean, the character of the candidate, the way they communicate and the way they relate to people is an important part, particularly for president. It may be invalid, in my opinion, for a congressman or senator because how they relate to you is not necessarily important in doing their job, but it is for a president. For a president, you're electing a leader. You're electing someone who's going to take the responsibility as an executive. And so all of those personal characteristics, I think, is a very valid thing to look at that candidate. So while I'm not a big fan of those swing voters from the standpoint of electing congressmen and senators, because I'm not sure they're making the right decisions when it comes to that, because they're more issue guys. That's where they vote on issues. The president leads. The president deals with crises. Congress really doesn't all that much do that. And so I would say that what you're seeing, if we can tie into the second part of the question, is that what we're seeing is in this election is in the last few weeks we've seen a couple of debates, 3 debates, 2 by the presidential, 1 by the vice presidential, and I think we've seen the American public have the folks who are in the middle, if you will, who have been swinging in this election a little way, swinging toward Governor Romney, and I think they were doing so because they liked what they saw. They saw someone who was decent, who was straightforward, who was aggressive, knowledgeable, and sort of laid out the case in a very composed and calm way, sort of unlike Joe Biden. And they saw a president in the first debate who seemed disinterested, annoyed to be there, and a president in the second debate who seemed sort of petulant, sort of angry at times. And in fact, both of them got angry, but here's the problem. Here's the problem with President Obama. One of the great attributes this president has had of 4 years is people liked him. And they thought he was a really good guy. And he came across as not a really good guy. Now, Romney didn't come across that much better, in my opinion, but they didn't see Romney as a guy who was a really good guy. So it hurt. So it hurt. I mean, look, I think Romney is a good guy. I know him. He's a good guy. But I'm just saying the perception of Romney was he was a CEO who didn't care about people. I mean, that was the perception that was driven home. Again, I'm not saying that's the truth, but that's what the perception was driven home. So it hurt the president to engage in that battle. And I think that's why you're going to see this race. I believe this race is over. I think this race is heading in a direction that is not going to turn around. I think Governor Romney is going to be elected. I think the Senate is going to be... I think Republicans will control the Senate, and actually about a pretty nice margin.
I actually thought the president did exactly what he had to do on Tuesday. It is important to be a nice guy in politics, but it's also important to be really tough so that people know you can stand up for America. And if you don't stand up for yourself, you won't stand up for America. And that's what the president did, is stand up for himself and not be pushed around. So, and I love Joe Biden's performance too. So I suppose you want me to make a prediction, which is completely foolhardy. So I'll give you the cable TV caveat. This is good for all of 24 hours until the next Gallup poll comes out. I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be very, very close. If you want to pay close attention to the election, don't worry about the national polls. Look at the polls in Ohio, Florida, and Virginia. If Mitt Romney loses either Ohio or Florida, he doesn't get to be president. If he wins them both and loses Virginia, then he can still be president, but he's got to win a bunch of swing states. This is a very close election. And it is true that Governor Romney had a very good performance his first debate, and that did make a difference, and it swung things. John Kerry had a good performance in his first debate against President Bush, and he came within 1 point of President Bush. Eventually that lead dissipated. I think we don't really have any idea who's going to win this election, but I'll tell you one thing. Barack Obama's got the best ground game I've ever seen in either candidate. I'll tell you right now that Republicans generally run much better organized campaigns than Democrats do. It's just a fact they're better organized and more in sort of a war mode in the campaign time, which is, no, I'm serious. They're very focused. But Barack Obama, when I ran for president in 2004, we had a record turnout in the Iowa caucus, a little over 100,000. When Barack Obama ran for president 4 years later, they broke the record by 100%. Over 200,000 people voted in the Iowa caucus, and that was his machine getting them out. They're going to get those people out in Ohio and all those places, too. So I don't know who's going to win. I think it is going to be very close. I think Senator Santorum is right. The momentum has been with the governor in the last couple of weeks, but there's still 2 weeks to go, and 2 weeks is an eternity in politics, and I do think that Barack Obama is going to be the next president of the United States.
So just very quickly, there are some people in the audience that might be voting in their first presidential election. How should they very specifically decide who to vote for?
If you're talking about the presidential race, I think the issue of obviously their values, the presidential candidate's values, and their character. I mean, I think character is a very important thing for a president. Their ability to lead this country and to bring this country together. And that's why, again, I would make the observation that in 4 years the president has really failed on that last point. He has not brought this country together. We are more divided in Washington D.C. as ever, and we have a president who has gone out and waged war on different elements of society. And I just don't think that's what America is looking for right now. They're looking for someone, and I think one of the strongest things Governor Romney did in the debates was talk about how he was able to work in a bipartisan fashion to get things done. And the president has accomplished absolutely nothing in a bipartisan fashion. All the things he got done were when he had 60 votes in the Senate and a supermajority in the House, and that isn't going to happen again in the next 4 years. Whoever the president is not going to have that House and that Senate. And if you want 4 more years, or like we had in the last 3 years, then you have a choice to make. If you want to try something different, I think you have another choice to make.
Governor Dean, very quickly.
Very quickly, when the leader of the opposition in the Senate says his only job is to get you out of office, it's kind of hard to work with him. Secondly, I think, Barack, maybe there's some warfare going on here. I'm glad the president's declared war on the banking establishment because they damn near ruined this country and sent us to hell. Thirdly, Senator Santorum mentioned the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, Barack Obama's administration has created over 4 million new jobs. Are we better off than we were 4 years ago? You bet we are. Yes, we are. And every economic statistic, the stock market is almost at the same highs it was before the crash and under the Republican administration of George W. Bush. We're in much better shape than we were 4 years ago, and we were losing 800,000 jobs a month when Barack Obama took office. We're now gaining between 100 and 200,000. Is it enough? No. But as Bill Clinton said at the convention, nobody could dig us out of the hole that we got dug for us. But when you give tax cuts to people and you don't pay for them. So, yeah, I'd give Barack Obama another 4 years so we can get us out of this mess, because you can't trust people whose only agenda is to oppose the President of the United States.
We're going to have a quick final, about 2 minutes of closing remarks and from each side, and then we're going to take questions from the audience.
I think I just did make my closing remarks.
If you will, you can.
I'll forego